This is Amplify You, the podcast about you discovering your message and broadcasting it to the world. If you're a coach, author, or speaker, you'll want to tune in. If you're looking for the best return on your time investment to get your message out to the world in a bigger way, we're giving you full access and behind the scenes look of how we're running our podcast, how our clients have found success, and what you can do to launch your podcast today. The world needs your message. I'm Michelle Abraham, the host. Join my family as we unleash your unique genius and find the connections you need to launch your adventure today. Join us and let's get amplified. Hello and welcome, Amplify You family. I'm Michelle Abraham, your host, and I am here today with a really exciting interview. Behind the mic interview with one of our podcasters, one of our new podcasters actually in the last few months, which is really great. So Susan Ney, welcome to the show. Everybody, Susan is the host of HR Inside Out, Demystifying HR and People Management, which is really cool. It's been interesting to watch Susan in this process. Let me tell you a little bit about Susan. Her background is in HR. She is a people person. She's worked with people her whole life as a human resource professional, and she specializes in all aspects of employment from hiring to retirement. So Susan is your go-to person for all things HR. And so she got her start in as a national representative for a large Canadian union. And then after pursuing her undergraduate degree in business, Susan transitioned to HR management, where you inspired to bring in both employee and the management perspectives to your work. So it's interesting, Susan just recently retired from your career in HR, and now where we originally met was in a book writing group where I watched Susan write her book for her career book in HR, which is really cool. And it's just been great to see you take this HR book that you did, which is called Leadership Inside Out, so affecting change from within, which is so interesting because I think that's a huge compilation of all your experience and what you've learned over the last few years, many years in the HR field, and all taken in this amazing book. So I think that's really cool. You hold a Master of Arts degree in Leadership and Training, and you're just an all-around amazing person. So thank you, Susan, for being with us today. And I'm excited to dive into about your podcast and your book and all things Susan.
Thank you. Wow. And thank you to you, because yes, it was through Kim Day's wonderful course on writing and publishing that we met. Absolutely. And I kept hearing you described as the guru of podcasts. I thought, I've got to meet this lady who's this guru of podcasts. So I took your course, and I am absolutely loving being able to take some of the learning, not just from myself, but also from, I call them my everyday heroes, other people in human resources, in leadership, in all of the topics that the nice thing about human resources is that you literally touch every aspect of people's lives. Mm-hmm. Although in a corporate environment, it's from recruitment through to retirement, everything that we deal with is so much a part of who we are. We take so much of who we are, or to our work environments. And so that enables me on the podcast to talk about just about everything.
I love that. Now, you did. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Kate. So continue. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's been so much fun. It's been a huge learning and a big stretch. And thank you to Amplify You, because your team has made it really easy. And it's just lovely to see such a professional product that's produced as a result of the good work that you do.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, and it's fun. It's fun to color outside the lines.
I love it. I'm going to say that. That was one of the things I remember you saying in our book writing course with Kim Day, is that you wanted to color outside of the lines. And I love that you're getting to do that, because I think probably in your career it's been very you're restrictive as to things that you can do or say in the HR space. So this kind of feels more free and fun, and I'm sure I'm more excited.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, HR often gets a bad rap. Mm-hmm. You get into the discipline or the profession with the intent of helping and building. And, in some organizations, I suspect that's more likely than the situations that I ended up in, very traditional organizations with, collective agreements and lots of rules. I worked primarily in the post-secondary and the local government sectors. And so there wasn't that opportunity to build. And through the podcast, it's about, taking the nuggets of learning and the wisdom. Steve Jobs says, it's not until you get to the end of your career and you've got these little dots throughout that you can actually take a look back and see what they actually look like, because they're quite different usually than when you first start out. And so it's having fun with those dots.
Yeah. And I think like collecting all this like knowledge and expertise in each step of the way, each dot on that map along your career to really like create this compilation of like, I consider your book like a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of all the things you've learned over your career, right?
Yeah. And I think I'd been working on the book for a long time. The challenge, when you're working with organizations, I saw a lot of disengagement, and the statistics on any of the studies that have been done is that it's a critical concern. They're talking 75-85% of people are at least somewhat disengaged, and some quite devastatingly disengaged. And I see a lot of that as we have some control over. We have the opportunity to make different choices. And so the book actually is a compilation about my personal journey, and then the journeys of many, many people that I've worked with and been colleagues, through my career, of just, we have within ourselves the capability of doing things differently. And so part 2 of the book is about that. Part 3 is about what is leadership. Because when I talk about leadership, it's the leadership within us, the leadership that we can exhibit on sports teams, on as Girl Guide leaders, and also within our organizations. And then talking about the application of that, the ripples, of understanding when we make different decisions that it's going to have ramifications. There's going to be ripples to that, understanding and dealing with those, providing stories of people who have had, really, diverse circumstances that they've dealt with and have made choices notwithstanding, or sometimes the choices haven't been their own, but they have recovered from those. They've built resilience and become stronger, of taking care of ourselves through that journey, and then just weaving the tapestry, and lots of great recommendations to other people's, Byron Katie's, making sure that we're checking our assumptions, and Suze Casey's talking about reframe, lots of other wonderful people out there who have got great books that you may not have the time to read, but some of those nuggets and encourages moving forth I speak of in Leadership Inside Out.
Yeah, this sounds like a great book for new leaders that are emerging to, you learn from the wisdom that you've cultivated in this book. Sounds like a great kind of like a roadmap or some sort of like a manifesto for them to really grab hold of. So that's really exciting. So those new leaders out there have something to look forward to also the knowledge and the wisdom that you've gained in others, that you've put this all together. I think that's amazing, right? From what you've learned and others have learned too. So I'd love to know now, what about with the book? How does the book and the podcast, how do they relate to each other, or how do they all tie into each other?
Well, the podcast I actually just recorded, I've actually just read part of part 2 in Insights from the Wizard of Oz. The book is not necessarily for everybody. It's a book that encourages reflection and looking deep within. And it's a lot of stories. And so, I'm taking the lessons from the Wizard of Oz. And so it's something that you can actually pick up and take a look inside and just look up a specific topic. But it's not like, it's not a textbook read by any means. And so really the Leadership Inside Out, affecting change from within. And what I'm encouraging in the demystifying human resources and people management, it's really the same stuff. And it's interesting because using HR, so many people think so negatively of human resources that I'm almost wondering whether I should have titled that differently, because this is really about, both the podcast and the book are really about encouraging that we present the very best version that we're capable of presenting of ourselves. And that there's lots that have gone before us who can help on that journey. Now, I encourage people to dare to soar, and that I really believe that we can, right? And we just need that encouragement. So they're both kind of along the same lines. And as I say, I through the podcast, I have the opportunity of bringing in guest speakers. Just interviewed John Izzo, and so he'll be coming up on the May 17th podcast, and lots of other really fascinating, and I've already interviewed really fascinating people. People just want to take a look on my website or on their favorite podcast platforms.
Yeah. So now going back to John Izzo, he is someone that you really looked up to, like as a mentor. And so tell us about that experience, because I think as for our podcasters listening to this, it's like, that is something that a podcast allows you to do, reach out to someone who is your mentor, who you would not maybe have any other opportunity to have a conversation with. He's an author. He's someone you've looked up to. You've taken his courses. You've been in his book club. And you were able to reach out to him and have him on your interview. Or I interview him on your podcast. So what was that process like? Did you just send an email and they said yes?
Really scary. I bet. And that's what's so cool, is the ability for us to stretch and learn, and to be anxious. It doesn't ever stop. So I reached out to his wonderful assistant and asked whether she thought he would even consider doing that. And she said, yes, I think so. And then checking to make sure that I wasn't going to get a whopping large bill, because we don't know, right? It's important to ask those questions. And then creating a script and giving more for me. John doesn't need a script by any means, but how wonderful, because this is a man who, his book way back when, at least 20 years ago, was Bring Your Soul to Work. And it's those kinds of, it's like, this is the work that we're doing as podcasters and as authors, is that he planted seeds inside me about what it would feel like to actually bring my soul to work. And he actually talked in the podcast about the last book he's just written, The Purpose Revolution. They're almost like bookends, because it's again about bringing your soul to work. It's about, what is your personal purpose? And what is, making sure that's in alignment with the purpose and the values of the organization that you're providing your talents to. And he said, I may never write again, which I hope is not the case. But how important it is. And I don't know that he has any sense of the impact that he had on me, many years ago, and how that has informed who I am, who I've been as a HR practitioner, who I've been hopefully as a mom, as a friend. And so it is just so, where else would I have had that opportunity to have an hour of this renowned author's time to be able to give it to the listeners?
Yeah, one of your heroes, like get to spend an hour with one of your heroes. How cool is that?
Yeah, just so cool. So cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, I remember when his book came out. It was quite a while ago, and it was one of the first kind of books in that space to kind of talk about your soul and like that purpose. I remember there was quite a lot of publicity around that book when it came out. And that's amazing how when a book can have that much impact in you, and like the way you ignited something inside of you that you've carried through your career. And it's interesting how if everyone could do that, just what a different workplace or work environments we would have if everyone was aligned value-wise with the organization they worked with. And I think first it has to come back to us and like with our aligning our own values first and making sure that we know what they are and can seek out an organization that fits those values.
And that's going to happen. And I think especially with the newer generations, they're demanding that.
Yeah.
Whereas the baby boomer, my life lessons were, Susan, get a job in an organization that you can spend your entire life in, and you're going to get a pension and benefits and all the rest of it. And we weren't encouraged to, but is that what I need? Is that what this individual needs? Do I need that security, or do I need something that's more free-spirited? And I think in our schools too these days, the kids are being encouraged to journal and to have these, we as parents are having these broader conversations with our kids. So it can't not have an impact on our organizations. I just hope it happens.
Yeah, amazing.
Quickly.
I was hearing someone else in an interview. I forget who it was now. I think it was, oh my gosh, it's going on. I think it was Seth Godin who was talking about how our schools were designed to create really great workers because they were the obedience it was teaching them and the, being able, learning in an environment, the environment you're creating was really great for workers. But things have changed so much in our world that no longer is working for them as a learning environment. It's no longer working for the organizations we're going for. And those things like early retirement and benefits and things that were really good bribery like a while ago aren't necessarily working anymore. So we have to look at this whole world is in a different way. And I think this year out of any years in the past has really brought that to the forefront of everyone's attention.
Well, it's interesting because I'm involved in a dialogue group out of Scotland, and I'll be interviewing Dr. Keith Dietz, whose whole doctoral dissertation was on his own personal journey of, all of those cultural, societal lessons that were just so not him, and how, as leaders, we need to become much more self-aware and his journey. And so I'll be interviewing him about that.
Great.
And how he's created, a better way for organizations to be working with the team that actually gets the work of the organization done. So, even though that model has been the model that we all went to school with, right? And it's never worked for everybody. It just assumed that everybody had the same learning style. And, we're gradually changing that. It's got to change faster than it is.
Yeah. I always had this conversation with a friend yesterday about the medical system too, where they really need this inspiring middle management because everyone's going on, the upper management's going on stress leaves, and then the middle management's left to deal with everything. And, we can inspire our teams to work together as a team, and just like what a different, I think some industries really need this really quickly, and I'm not any sort of expert on any of this, but that's kind of what I've been hearing and seeing. I'm not involved in an environment, in a corporation, anything like that. So, but that's kind of what I've heard from people who are, and I think that's kind of scary.
So as individuals, as for every person who chooses to learn how to do things differently, and that's what I'm encouraging, of looking within themselves to be their very best. We influence every one of us. We end up changing the culture because of the way we approach, the way we learn how to question with more curiosity, so that, hopefully the defensiveness comes down, of people seeing what an impact that can have. And slowly, if every one of us just did a little bit and did something just a little bit different, the book Atomic Habits, it's like small changes, and everyone's capable of small changes. And that's, I love baby steps. It's like in anything, you move forward by taking baby steps, and those baby steps, and the more people that go, I like that, just coming and just being calmer, of just learning better stress management techniques. And so you come to the work environment and you're feeling calmer. And then then it's people are calmer, and they like hanging around with you because you're, and so on and so on and so on. And there's a ripple effect. And so I'm going to create some tsunamis over time, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm comfortable with it just being waves at this point.
Can't wait to see your tsunamis. So one of the things that you've done and you've promised fun in your podcast. So I want to talk about that a little bit. What does that mean to you? And how is that explored in your podcast?
Some of it's through the stories. I know in the recruitment story of sharing the resume that we received when I was at BCIT on a pop cam. Now, this was a graphic artist, but it was very difficult to file. Or the fellow who felt it was appropriate to come into the interview, literally sit at the head of the table, put his feet on the table, lean back and say, "I'm ready, are you?" Understandably, he didn't get the job. And just the people that we're bringing in, the laughter at ourselves, the oopsies that, it's what just happened. What have we learned from it? And what are we going to do differently going forward? Poking some fun at ourselves, bringing in some really interesting people. I haven't talked to him yet, but I know somebody who did sound mixing in the movie industry. Okay. Really hoping I can bring him in, and just about the opportunity to learn a little bit about careers that people may not have contemplated considering. My a good friend retired and has become a vet assistant, and her eyes literally sparkle. This lady is just so happy with her new career. And so bringing people in from a tugboat operator, again, I haven't asked whether he'd be prepared to do that, some occupations that are things that most of us wouldn't have considered. So having some fun with that, having some fun in the podcast, not serious, although we'll talk about serious topics like conflict resolution and polishing our communication skills.
What's been the most fun part about having a podcast for you as the host?
Well, and then the fun part of, where else would you get an hour with someone like John Izzo? And hopefully others I'll be able to encourage to come in and talk to the listeners.
Yeah, we can see why so many of our clients fall in love with this podcasting. It's like it's a fun, it's really fun way of engaging with other people in a different way than we normally engage on a regular day-to-day basis. And so a lot of our clients say it's their most favorite thing they do in their week now. Have you fallen in love? Have you gotten the podcasting bug, Susan?
Yeah. And what's lovely is that because it's, it's so accessible, you can go out for a walk and plug in and learn. You've got a Podcast Connect. I probably got the name wrong.
Podcasters Connect and Collaborate. Yeah.
Yeah. A wonderful opportunity. And, we all encouraged each other in the Podcast Connect to go in and listen to each other's. And I did.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. Just topics that I had not even thought might be of interest. And so we're supporting one another.
Yes, absolutely.
By encouraging one another. But it's just, here with a Zoom call, you've got to sit and you've got to be in front of your computer. But my goodness, we need to be outside and getting some fresh air. So just, take your iPhone and plug in and listen to all sorts of wonderful stuff.
Absolutely. My brother and I thought this Mother's Day would be a really fun idea to make a private audio podcast for our mom, because her siblings are getting older and she loves her grandkids, but she's always out walking and listening to podcasts. We're like, how cool would it be to have her own family podcast? So we went and interviewed everybody. And so we're recording this episode before Mother's Day. It's going to be coming out after Mother's Day, but it's really exciting. I'm excited to see what her reaction is going to be to this.
Oh, that is so lovely. I know how wonderful it's been to get an entire family worldwide together for my mom's 85th birthday.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah. So some of this technology and, how we've been learning in COVID to do things differently.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah, we're so lucky with the technology we have now, that the opportunities that we have to connect with people, just outside of our normal way of connecting, I think has been, it's widened and broadened our horizons and our networks globally, which is so much fun. So, Susan, do you find that the way you're talking about HR and the way that you're talking about, managing people from within, it is a global conversation. It's not just a North American conversation, which I think is perfect for the book and the podcast platform. So tell us a little bit about your goal with it. So what do you hope to inspire from having your book and your podcast?
I think by encouraging people to not be the victim. I go back to that, both with the book and the podcast. It's like employee engagement. What can you do to become more engaged, and not, to not look at your circumstances as being done to, but what might I be contributing to this that could change my experience? And so I think my hope is that people take a moment and reflect upon what they're contributing to their circumstances, and I talk about leadership, I talk about HR, but really this is about life.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do that, when we take that time and do that reflection and think, maybe if I come to work grumpy, then everybody else is going to be grumpy too. Maybe if I come to work not grumpy, that's going to have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to create change in our world.
Absolutely.
And I know it takes effort and energy, because when you're feeling in the doldrums, it's sometimes hard to pull out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the encouragement is, where are your fans? Who are the people, the friends that love you to bits and are always going to be there for you? Lean where you need to lean. Don't be afraid to reach out to resources, to friends, to talk to people. Like, maybe I can get people engaging in different conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's a little bit about creating those ripples that in my experience, we don't have some of those conversations often enough. And I think they could be really beneficial.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping I can create those conversations.
For sure. Yeah. We did something interesting with our team meeting this week where we're all on Zoom and we haven't even ever met most of the people on our team ever in person because of where the world is these days. So we did this, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of like what was your rose, what's your thorn, and something personal. So we got to know each other a little bit better. And it's something that I was realizing we were coming to our team meetings and we're just talking business. But, as our team is growing, I think it's really important. We don't have those cooler talks anymore, or those lunch times to sit together. Yeah. So we need to find some way to get to know each other and connect with each other on a personal basis too. So
I love it.
Yeah, so it was really fun. Actually, we were all laughing the whole time. So it was good. It was a really good experience, I think, for our team. So Susan, as our listeners a lot of people are leaders or emerging leaders or coaches, authors, speakers, what are a couple of pieces of advice you can leave us with for our emerging leaders today?
Stay curious. Just, it's interesting. I've been helping with a Capilano University course, and, so many of the different scenarios that we've looked at, it's about people management and in local government. And, the scenarios that we're looking at, it's, and what else? And what else to dig deeper? What might be going on? And we're so fast to just jump onto the surface information that we have, and we don't question our assumptions. So I think that's really important. I think lifelong learning is critical. Our world is changing so quickly. And the only way that you can keep up is just by just, being flexible, by connecting with people. And being self-aware. Like really, really taking in all the years that I worked, I think the worst thing that happened is that we weren't given and we didn't take the time to step back and even observe how coworkers were doing. Where somebody would just all of a sudden be presenting as grumpy. It's like, what's going on with you? And if somebody had just taken a moment and said, are you okay? That human, because we're human beings. We're not robots that we have feelings, and there's
human connection again.
And there's stuff that goes on at home that, it's the old rule was just leave it at the door. It doesn't belong here. Well, we can't do that.
There's so many hours of your day at work. It's hard to differentiate the two.
Well, especially right now. But, if you've got something going on with your kid, I know, I'm a parent, that doesn't just leave you when you walk into the office door. So just, I think, remembering that. And learning from each other.
Yeah. And I love what you said, the curiosity, lead with that curiosity. That's really great. And the self-awareness is so powerful.
And don't beat yourself up either. Yeah. We're so incredibly hard on ourselves. It's like, oh goodness, take a breather.
Yeah, you can't be perfect right out of the gates. You got to do some of that personal development, some of that growth, and some of just mistakes, right? Our best learning.
Learn from our mistakes. Yeah. mean, that's how, how most of, I know when I look back on my career, my biggest learning was the most difficult situations that I ended up in, the hardest organizations. When I look back and go, boy, if I hadn't had that, then but it was about growing from it, not becoming
not the victim.
Oh my goodness, I'm the victim and look what happened to me, but just, knowing that something perhaps wasn't a fit anymore and being prepared to move on, make the leap.
And yeah, I think that being flexible and moving on and knowing when it's time to move on too is so much more, it seems to be more of a thing now that we have permission. We feel like we have permission to do that. Like you don't need to stay in the same career your whole life, and you can move on and change and grow when you grow as a person. I mean, that's only natural to evolve as a person and evolve in careers too. I think that's one of the great things right now, that the opportunity is out there. And Susan, I just want to thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's been great.
Michelle,
You're welcome. It's been so great to connect with you over your podcast. I'm so thrilled that you've launched it. And for anyone who wants to check out Susan's book, it's Leadership Inside Out, Affecting Change Within. Where are you selling your book? Where can we find it?
On Amazon. It's amazon.ca.uk.com.
Perfect. So go check it out there. And then on all your favorite podcasting apps, make sure you go check out her awesome podcast series, HR Inside Out, Demystifying HR and People Management, which I love the name of that. Such an awesome title.
And for anybody who's ever been curious, oh my goodness, be in touch with Michelle. Her podcast course is fabulous and it's so much fun.
Oh, thank you. It's because we have fun people in it. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Amplify You family, thanks for joining us today. It's been another great episode of Behind the Mic. Thank you so much, Susan, for spending this time with us today. It's been our pleasure. And until next time, Amplify You family, go out there. Your uniqueness is your genius. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.
Bye, everybody.